Right, so it was just a week and a couple of days ago that I've bought myself this Philips Classic 388 dictaphone or dictation machine from the thrift store, and the video about it hasn't gone to, well, it had a first initial success, but someone disliked it and told YouTube algorithm to decide to f it all off. Please don't use that dislike button. It's f it off YouTube's algorithm. Instead, give short and constructive criticism if you don't like a video. With that warning out of the way, the tape I need for this device has come quite a bit quicker than I expect, and I'm also having the adapter for 2.5 to 3.5 on its way. So today I really wanted to talk a bit about how I can use this device and what kind of tape goes into it, how it looks like and everything like that. So here are practically all the Philips stuff I need of a basic operation of this dictation machine. The Philips dictation machine, the Classic 388, Philips AA batteries, naturally, Philips mini cassette. Now, it's worth remembering that this format actually came a couple years after the compact cassette, which has become known as the de facto standard for music cassettes. The compact cassette was actually intended, if I recall correctly, for use by dictation machines as well. However, that didn't quite take off, and this mini cassette, which came a couple years later, practically replaced it, becoming a dedicated dictation and note-taking tool. Kind of outside the frame here like this, I have the case and the shell for a music cassette, and this is the case and shell for the mini cassette for dictation. Now, if we were to hold them not too close to each other, because otherwise my magnetic fields can influence each other anyway, if I hold them like this, it almost seems like the mini cassette isn't just a couple of years newer, but it's almost like a child of this cassette, this normal cassette. It says normal position, but it has gotten quite mature as a music format over the years, having gotten newer tape formulations like chrome and metal. Wait, this case actually says it's for a type 2 chrome tape, but this is a type 1 ferric tape. It's getting kind of weird with my cassette collection. We've got Dolby B, C, HX Pro, Dolby S later on, the really high-end stuff. Automatic track skip, intro scan, auto reverse on some machines. It's overall a pretty comprehensive package for music, but the dictation format, the mini cassette, this tiny little one, it doesn't even have any of that. It didn't gain any upgrade in the way the format works and is operated. Literally all it allowed was the miniaturization of the playback and recording devices. I mean, this device is a little bit shorter this way than a music cassette, and a bit longer as well, and yet it's able to hold 15 minutes per side on this mini cassette, which is quite astonishing, to be honest, to see this. Also, just two AA batteries can run it just fine. So let's just have a look at the casing as well. This is very ingenious. The old music cassettes, they come in this big jewel case with the sharp edges and sharp corners, and yeah, pretty basic. Pretty great for music cassettes because everything is standardized around them. But again, the mini cassette comes in this little cradle. Yes, I literally said cradle. And it basically means that you can attach this to a document. It's actually the packaging document for the cassette, which I've bought online because the thrift store didn't have those when I wanted to get them. Anyway, so that's that. Very user-friendly for dictation purposes. So a little bit of a talking head about the irony that I've got there. In the last video about this dictation machine, I decided to talk about information security and link it up to the EAS scenario The Innocent, the first EAS scenario ever made, and the only EAS scenario to date that I have ever remade. So what happens here is we've got the compact cassette right here, which is quite old, quite bulky for dictation use, and yet for music it's very advanced. Of course there was CD and everything. It didn't quite die completely and has seen a resurgence in modern day. But it was practically over in the 1990s, maybe except if you had a really old car. Yeah, Mum actually used to have some old tapes. I pulled them out. Very weird story. About this, the mini cassette, it was released a couple of years after the compact cassette to make even more basic and smaller dictation machines. But what happened is very similar to what I talked about. This almost a child of this practically ruled the world of dictation and is still in use to this day with no break ever in production. And not just for information security reasons, this is also very, very handy to use. You just don't have to wait for anything to boot up or update its firmware, just do that. And then there's a little record button here if you want to record something to the tape. So I thought, hey, when I was talking about the Innocent, the mini cassette itself is quite a bit smaller and newer and less advanced than the compact cassette or music cassette, and yet, just like how the children in the Innocent took over the world, this tiny little tape took over the world of dictation. Pretty neat. Now, of course, this video is about this thing over here, the Philips mini cassette. Kind of interestingly enough, you actually put it in kind of like this. So like the bottom goes in here, and then you just click it like this and it holds it in place. Of course, there's no auto revert on this thing to have to turn the tape around. It says right over here, 30. I think there are longer versions available as well, but I haven't looked into that too much because I just wanted to get started. Now I thought this was voice amplification. It was actually voice activation, which means that whenever there's a voice going through this microphone, the machine starts recording, and when there's no voice, it stops recording. Pretty great. Especially considering that you can actually press the record button in, and then it locks in place. Very handy for recording conferences. Only when I pull out the tape does it reset, but of course it's also a very handy button for one-handed operation, like this. I've actually got a recording on this tape made just now. 3-volt input. I've tested that with multiple power supplies and nothing really fits. Why does every company have to reinvent the wheel with barrel attacks? Just put the batteries in this thing and let's turn it on. The heater just came on somewhere spring, so it's time to turn that off. Let's go. This is a test of the Philips Classic 388 dictation machine. Let's see how this comes out. I didn't know this before, but if you hold down the record button all the way, it actually locks in place. However, I've held it in only part way for this recording, and I'm going to release it now. Yep, that works fine. Actually, when I held the button part way, it didn't engage the locking mechanism. That means that you can use it in one-handed operation like this. So just holding it in when I want to take a note, releasing it when it's the end of the note. Now I can also use this button to erase a tape. The idea is that you go to the beginning, you hold the button, and you go to fast forward or rewind. So basically that's a general overview of this device. Now I'm going to wait a little moment until the 2.5mm to 3.5mm adapter is going to come in, and then I can actually talk about using the dictaphone.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so that was a test of the recording of sound effects onto the tape. I was just getting off the train to Tilbury University, walking towards the university building. I ended up recording some bird songs and a dog barking in the background. So the microphone on here was quite sensitive. This is actually very useful for music sampling and stuff like that. And here is a little section about the last little part I've got over here. This is a Nat Phillips 2.5 to 3.5mm adapter. Right at the back top is a microphone and a headphone output. Now, of course, Philips wants you to use their accessories like microphones, telephone interfaces and earphones, but with this little adapter I can go ahead and use my own. For instance, I can plug in a pair of headphones like this one. Just plug that in and it works fine, although it only goes through the left channel, which is kind of weird. However, I can also do a direct hookup sample of how this device sounds like. So let's do that. That would normally be used to insert samples or to copy notes onto the computer. So here we go. Okay, so that was a test of the recording of sound effects onto the tape. I was just getting off the train to Tilbury University, walking towards the university buildings. I ended up recording some bird songs and a dog barking in the background. So the microphone on here was quite sensitive. This is actually very useful for music sampling and stuff like that. I've also been able to run the adapter in reverse, so connecting a microphone or another input device here and connecting this output here to the microphone input on the dictaphone. I'm actually going to go back to camera to show you some of those tests. Okay, so I plugged in my microphone that I'm using at my desk. Apparently the power light is turned off, but maybe that doesn't mean anything for the dictaphone because, like I said before, it has quite a sensitive microphone internally, so maybe it can use an external one just as well. Just before I continue, you might have noticed it's actually quite a bit louder than when I tried recording via the internal microphone, which works fine. But I think what happens when you plug in an external microphone, for instance through this dongle here, or a Philips microphone, the system or inside the microphone amplifier, I think it changes levels, because when you're using the internal microphone, you're probably just recording yourself talking to yourself. But when you're plugging in an external microphone, it's very likely to be a room level microphone that can record an entire conference. Let's continue on with an attempt at recording music. Now with that, the volume level is very critical. The first attempt you're going to hear now was done at a very low volume. Here we go. That was done at a higher volume level. Apparently, like the tape can get distorted very quickly at high volume levels. But it actually sounds pretty well for a dictation format, even though I don't really intend to listen to music via this thing. It can be used to record little sound effects that can be used in music, or similarly, I could actually, and I'm going to show you that in another part of this video, plug in a radio scanner. Obviously this one doesn't have an antenna attached to it, into the dictaphone. And so what that means is I would plug one side in to the microphone input and the other side into the headphone input of the scanner, attach an antenna of some kind, set the volume, like I think to level 1 or something. I should be able to record radio conversations, like from airband or something. I'm actually going to show you that live, maybe in a short or something. So that's practically a couple of ways in which I can use this. So that is voice note taking, using it to record sound effects in the environment and sampling those, and using it in combination with something like a radio scanner to record radio conversations. Now there's a couple of things I really am kind of interested as well in telling you, so let's go over those. First of all, why was the mini cassette actually created in the first place? Well, it was created in the 1960s. That was a time when not a lot of people had access to home computers, if at all, and thus not a lot of people learned to type. If you wanted a typed out document but couldn't type it yourself, you would need a typist or secretary to type it out for you. Now you could just say what you want typed out, but what happens when the secretary leaves? Well, there's two options. Either you write the note by hand and give it over to the secretary's inbox, who would then try to read it and type it over. Legibility is really an issue there, as well as the fact that it takes quite a lot of time. So people thought, why not just have an audio recording of your note? Why not have people just speak into the microphone? It's also very handy for recording conferences onto paper as well. So the first dictation machines, or dictaphones, actually used what we would nowadays call worm media. They would use a cylinder or a tape onto which a mechanical groove is placed, which would contain this sound. So it's a very mechanical system, which of course has its problems. Very prone to errors. It can't be erased and re-recorded over, and it's quite expensive to maintain as well, even outside the media. There's quite a bit of delicacy involved in those devices. Of course, later on we had transistors. This was the 1960s again. Integrated circuits necessary for computing still didn't exist, but there were transistors, and those were very useful for miniaturizing electronic devices, and it was most commonly done in the dictation systems for obvious reasons. The easier it is to make a dictation note, the more likely it is to go out, like as a letter or something, or maybe even as a record. So the idea is you can actually erase a tape, a magnetic tape, and record over it later on. Again, yeah, that was that. Very much the opposite of like mechanical media, which physically changes its shape to accommodate for the sound. But the earliest tape machines used open reel mechanisms, and those were still a bit fiddly to use. So people thought, why not make it even easier again? Tape was the solution. Well, actually not at first this tape. The first tapes that came around for this were actually the compact cassettes. It was only when a couple of years later Philips wanted to try it again, and they wanted to create the mini cassette for that, which worked incredibly well to the point of it still being used to the present day. However, the compact cassette already had that, and it was a fair success until the mini cassette came around. Then it dwindled out a little bit, and Philips and third parties immediately started finding new applications, including music and data storage. Especially music, it's very well remembered. There's a lot of innovation on that, and I was nostalgia back to that time. However, for data storage, there's another interesting note. Many home computers back in the 1980s, fast forwarding a bit, actually used compact cassettes for recording programs and playing those back into the computer. However, there was actually two computer systems actually, that used a tape similar to this one for data storage. So the first of those actually uses this very cassette tape for data storage, and it was the Philips P2000. Of course, the P2000 later got replaced by MSX, which required the use of a floppy drive. So that use was very short-lived, unlike uses in music production and dictation. However, there was a kind of successful implementation of a very similar system to this tape, which became known as, quite interestingly, the mini data cassette by HP Hewlett-Packard, who had a series of calculators and later pocket computers which could use these tapes to store programs and data. However, those tapes are actually incompatible with a dictation machine like this one, and so you can't use them in this. And the HP tape decks that we used for the mini data cassette couldn't handle a Philips mini cassette. So that's some very interesting little things about mini cassette and related things, its history, and how dictation came out in general. Of course, in many areas, dictation is nowadays practically useless because, well, everyone can type. However, both in business and personal use, especially with the trend of going analog and de-googling and everything, dictation machines have found a new niche as simple devices that allow you to make voice notes. I mean, even on the 3DS, taking a note, I have a notepad application on there, I made a video about it before, it's very sessional. I mean, I turn the device on, I have to wait for all the files to load in, then I start the notepad application, load in my note file, and I can write a new little note below that. Meanwhile, so I would do that, for instance, if I want to write something out. But with this, all I have to do is hold the record button, push this up, and it makes a note overwriting whatever was there. And I can write that out or plug it into a computer very easily, just like on the 3DS. Of course, the only real difference and downside being that the 3DS takes an SD card which stores plain text, and I can just randomly scroll across that very quickly. This mini cassette, however, which is used for this dictation machine, is a linear format, which means I would have to fast forward or rewind to find the note I want to use. But it's still a lot of fun and a very handy way to just make a quick little note. Another little side note, this is true, it's about comparing the rewind time to a fairly typical cheap little compact cassette. I think this is going to be a 60-minute one, I don't know which one it is. Maybe 30 minutes. With a 30-minute mini cassette. I don't know if it's going to be a proportional representation. Okay. But I'm just going to do this anyway, just for a bit of fun. Let's actually try rewinding a mini cassette and compare that with rewinding a compact cassette. So I've made sure I'm at the beginning of side 1. I'm going to flip it over and see what happens in real time. 3, 2, 1. Oh, it. Still going, still going. Almost there. Last steps. 3. Yep, we're done. Now let's compare this against a compact cassette, and then we're going to talk a little bit about why I did this comparison in the first place. This is the Live in London that I humorously introduced in the first part of this video. And if you can read that correctly, this is my absolutely amazing Yamaha KX260 RS, which stands for Rapid Search, tape deck, which of course takes these compact cassettes, or music cassettes. Let's put one of those in and see how long it takes to rewind it. So I'm going to make sure I'm at the beginning of the tape, flip it side. Oh, yeah, I'm already rewinding. Now, I don't know if this is the same length as the mini cassette because, well, obviously the mini cassette tape runs at a slow speed normally, and it might also be a bit thinner to be able to fit more tape in the same shell. So I'm just going to let this do its thing. Meanwhile, I actually had a talk with one of my neighbours who went over to Hanover the so many at the time with his loved one. I'm not really going to tell you details. Other than the fact that they went to a historical cinema that still uses film as the medium for their movies. And of course, we kind of talked about that and we joked a little bit, and this is actually true, about how long it takes to rewind those films. Just rewinding a physical film stock, because it can be hundreds of kilometers or feet long, that is where the term footage comes from, it can actually take half an hour to rewind an entire movie film. So there we go, we're almost at the end of this tape. Or sorry, for Wait, that's taking a long time somehow. Okay, let's have a look. Is the tape fully rewound? No, it's not. Okay, let's try a second attempt. What? It's... No. Okay, it's actually... Yeah, maybe this tape wasn't that great of an example, because I think the tape itself has stuck in the middle or something. Yeah. Yeah, see you another time. Bye bye. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you do, please give a thumbs up and share this video with all your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.